Hi guys, I'm back again today with 11 essential driving tips for tourists. I can't read. Tourists traveling Norway. So before we do start, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and let's find out what are the tips. This is
Today we're going to run through 11 tips for tourists who plan on driving their way around Norway.
This is Norway. You know what? Norway is, like I keep saying and will forever say, Norway is heaven. Like, yeah. So you're telling me that heaven you can drive as well? And you're gonna tell us the tips to drive when we get to heaven? Thank you.
It's a very
Look at
modern
that.
country with excellent infrastructure, so it's remarkably easy to get around.
Look at Norway.
But there are some
Heaven.
nuances which are worth understanding before you get started.
Feels like heaven. Oh, so
The
beautiful.
first tip is
my
understanding the legal
dream.
blood alcohol limit for when you're driving. This is important because in Norway it's very, very low. If you're on vacation, chances are you'll be having a few drinks, maybe with dinner, maybe at lunch, but you should know ahead of time that the legal limit is just 0.02. And you could be over that limit after a single drink. If you compare that to most states in the US, which is 0.08, and the UK also 0.08, you can see why this is a critical thing to be aware of. The penalties are very harsh, and if you get caught out, it could completely ruin your vacation. Tip number 2 is to be prepared to pay a lot of money in tolls. As you can see from this invoice that we received at the end of our trip,
How do you read this? Like, is this 1,000? Because the comma is somewhere else, right? So I don't know. I never know how to read when it's not the way I was taught. So is this like point? Because here it will be like 10,586 and 58 cents, but it will be with a point, right? The point will symbolize cents and comma will symbolize thousands or millions, right? Depending. So let me know.
9 days, we incurred 26 different toll charges. This worked out to be roughly $10 per day of driving.
Oh.
Not outrageously high, but it's an
Oh, I thought it was like 10,000. So it's 10. Okay, it's very confusing. Your the money system thingy. Yeah. Okay, that's not bad. I thought it was like 10,000.
worked out to be roughly $10
$10,000
per
is
day
insane.
of driving. Not outrageously high, but it's an extra expense nonetheless. Number 3 is one of the more unexpected things I learned about Norway while driving around the country, and that is how interesting the tunnels can be. Now I know what you're thinking, this is normally incredibly mundane and boring, but by the 3rd or 4th day I started to notice that no two tunnels seem to be alike. It was almost like a network of fingerprints all around Norway where no two were alike, and strangely I started to look forward to going into tunnels, but I'm very aware how strange it is to say that out loud.
Now that he mentioned it, I got
We have
it.
8 more tips still to go, but if you're enjoying the video so far, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We release a new video every week which will hopefully inspire your next road trip or travel destination. Number 4 will come as no surprise that in an expensive country like Norway, renting a car will be a huge part of your vacation costs. To make sure you get the best deal, we recommend 2 things. First, make sure any rental you get comes with unlimited kilometers or miles. This can really amp up the cost of your rental if you drive long distances. The second is to use a comparison website like rentalcars.com. This will scan a number of different rental providers and give you a lot of choice so you can select the best value deal for you. We've included a link in the description. Number 5 will give you a window into what kind of wildlife you'll expect driving around Norway. Sheep. Expect at some point you're going to come across sheep just standing on the road, very near the road, or perhaps just hanging out in a car park. Either way, they can be a bit of a hazard if you're not careful. So be patient with the sheep, they're adorable, let them go on their way and they won't bother you.
I think
Picture with them now.
they're like, feed me, human.
I wouldn't go in there.
Number 6. Expect to take a lot of ferries. When you're driving around the fjords, there can't be bridges and tunnels to get you everywhere you need to go. A lot of the road
Oh,
connections are
this
done
is
with these large
insane.
ferries where you can drive straight onto them and they take you back and forth across the water channels. And while this will slow you down, it's actually a fairly seamless process and we didn't come across any major holdups. But you do need to factor this into your driving time when you're planning out your itinerary. But sometimes it can be a welcome break from the car so you can get out, stretch your legs, enjoy the view and the breeze in your hair.
It's a very nice inside area with big windows so you can enjoy the view without all the cold wind like I'm copping out here. Plus a cafe, bathrooms, all that.
While we're on the topic of potential delays, tip number 7 is expect a lot of roadworks on very narrow roads. Sometimes this means there'll be a whole lane of traffic blocked while they let traffic through on another side. This was the biggest cause of delays that we encountered on our road trip, and they were harder to predict on your navigation apps as well. So you might need to give yourself a reasonable buffer if you're in a hurry or have an inflexible deadline like a flight you have to make at an airport. Tip number 8. Speed limits are not always appropriate for the conditions. We were lucky that the vehicle that we rented had a speed limit display on the dashboard. This made it easy to keep track of what the limit was wherever we went. Sometimes the speed limit was much higher than what it would have been safe to drive at given the conditions. There's a lot of bends in the road or variable conditions of the road itself, especially in bad weather, that makes it worthwhile to just slow down a little bit and take your time. Staying safe when you're doing long hours on the road should be your top priority. And that brings us to tip number 9. And that is that Norwegians are incredibly patient and courteous drivers. Can you say the same thing about the drivers in your hometown? I certainly can't. Road rage, beeping your horn, all of those things are just not cool. To give one example, I was driving down what I thought was a deserted road, and just before one of the famous Norwegian tunnels, there was a small turn-off for something that we thought we wanted to stop and take a look at. This was a last-minute snap decision, and I slowed right down to see whether there was room for me to pull the car off the road. What I didn't realise is that there was a car right behind me. He sat there patiently and didn't make a sound, and I felt quite bad when I realised that he'd been sitting there for at least 10 seconds waiting for me to move. I waved at him to offer some form of apology, and once I moved out of the way, he just drove past without ever making a sound. For tip number 10, we're going to move on to something a bit more practical, and that is paid parking. When inside the major cities and towns, there will be a lot of paid parking. A lot of it is very obvious inside major parking stations, but on the street it can be more difficult to spot whether you have to pay for a parking spot or not. So memorize these 2 words, mot avgift. Forgive my Norwegian pronunciation there, but it essentially means you can park there for a fee. Tip number 11 is that some streets will barely even be streets.
I have a question. What if I don't drive, or I don't want to drive and I want to go here? How do I do so? Is there like public transportation, or do you have to rent a car, or like even if you're not gonna drive? How? Because it doesn't look like any transportation goes here. It feels like this is you have to drive to go there. So let me know, please, because this is so beautiful that if you go to Norway, you have to go there.
At the mercy of Google Maps or whatever navigation app that you use, and will be especially prone to very narrow streets or potentially ending up in someone's front yard in the narrow streets of the cities and towns. This particular overgrown back alley just looked like a normal street on the navigation app, and I remain grateful we were able to get out of there without hitting anything, anyone, or scratching the rental car. Now, I wanted to give you one final bonus tip to prepare you for driving around Norway, and that is to keep as much flexibility in the timing of your itinerary as possible. There are a lot of really well-known sites that you can mark off on a map and tick off one by one on your road trip, but some of the best stuff you'll just find on the side of the road
So
unexpectedly,
beautiful.
or
Yes, you
from
too,
driving
but
down a street you
the
just
view.
like the look of. You will get the best out of your Norway experience by being open-minded to what you're going to discover and having the flexibility of time to be able to follow wherever your nose takes you. Because not everything is in a guidebook or a YouTube video. And nothing beats discovering a hidden gem that was unexpected that ends up becoming your favourite part of the trip.
I want to stay there. Oh. Damn, Norway is just so beautiful. I didn't realize that before until now. Like, I knew it was beautiful, but I didn't think it was that beautiful. Like, okay, there's so many other countries in the world that, might be more beautiful. That's what I was thinking. But no, I think this is the most beautiful place ever I've seen, honestly. I think Norway is the most beautiful. Like, me watching it on YouTube, that's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. It's crazy. It's insane. That's why my books, it's heaven on earth. It's definitely heaven. Probably that's the gateway to heaven, to be honest. Like, yeah. It's crazy. What? Wow. But anyways, thank you guys, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.